Welcome to the Mission 43 Lead, Learn, Inspire podcast. I'm Brian Von Herbulis, the director of Mission 43, and it is our intent with this podcast to continue to bring people living purposeful lives, people that are bringing meaning to their communities, and people that demonstrate the ability to lead, learn, and inspire if you just push yourself beyond what you thought your limits were. So I'm really excited about today's guest. Today's guest is coming to us from the great state of Texas, and he's got history here in the state of Idaho, and we'll get to that a little bit. But this guy, David Vobora, played football in the NFL and has then transitioned himself to finding new purpose post-professional athletic career into training adaptive athletes. So David is now the founder of the Adaptive Training Foundation, and we're going to dive right in with David and learn more about this nonprofit he started. So David, welcome. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Grateful to be with you, Brian, man. This is awesome.
So just let everybody know what your connection to Idaho is.
Yeah, so I got the perfectly positioned for the shameless plug. My Vandals helmet, my little mini Vandals helmet right here.
Yeah.
So I was tried and true from the tribe up north. It's funny. I my football career very much reflects, I think, the ethos that is woven into the fibers of my being and how I served those who served us, because I was always an underdog, always viewed as the person who, he's good, but is he good enough to go from high school to Division I?
Yeah.
Is he good enough to go from Division I to pro? And I made a living out of proving people wrong, man, and being able to take hard work, especially in the gym, which is my sanctuary, to achieve more than those that were more talented than me. So shout out to our folks up in Moscow and just the greater state of Idaho, man. And I love you both Boise folks as well. I'm allergic to blue and orange, just for the record.
Yeah.
But no, that whole state is gorgeous. I love what you guys are doing out there with vets.
All right, so grew up playing football and turned that passion into a career in the NFL. But again, as the underdog, right? Mr. Irrelevant, 2008, last man, the 252nd pick by the St. Louis Rams in the NFL draft. So you knew you were fighting an uphill battle as the underdog, just starting out in this new career.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think for me, it was always about a foot in the door. Doesn't matter how you came. Right, signing bonuses. I bought an old '84 Chrysler LeBaron wood panel convertible when I got to St. Louis, Missouri to play for the Rams. Bought it for $1,500 on eBay, and it was fun because I became a starter rookie year. The first time I got asked by the community department to make a speech was to go to a local elementary school. And Brian, it was so cool, man. It was like a week after being drafted, and I walked in this auditorium, there's 200 or 300 kids, and I said, how many of you guys have ever been the last pick at something in your life? And hands just shot up, right? And I said, well, look, last Sunday, I was the last pick. But it's not going to stop me. It's not going to stop you either. So I'm all about, playing the hand that I'm dealt with the greatest opportunity to lead and to serve others, and for me to have an opportunity to be drafted in the NFL was to achieve a lifelong dream, but that's just when it started, right? That's when the real work came out. So it was a beautiful career. Look, I would say this, I did more than some, less than most. And with that, I take great pride in a respectable career, but certainly the platform to do all of the more significant stuff. And I mean that in a very confident way. All of the work that I've done post-football has been most significantly in my life the best stuff.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I love the fact that you recognized opportunity, right? And that's exactly what we believe at Mission 43. Life is about recognizing and seizing opportunities, and we're all going to face moments of transition in our life. I see so many parallels with professional athletes and those that chose to wear the cloth of the nation, in military service. At some point, it's got to end, right? The NFL high and that ride, that career has got to end, and you got to figure out who you're going to be in life after that. And it's the same for military veterans. You got to figure out who you're going to be, and that's why Mission 43 and many other great organizations exist to help people find their why and to find and seize opportunities in life. So let's talk a little bit about that transition process for you. You know, underdog, seizes opportunity, makes the most of it, starts his rookie year in the NFL, and has a really promising career that then became plagued by injury.
Yep.
And what transpired? What happened, causing you to then leave the NFL?
Yeah, I would certainly label it as an identity crisis. You know, when you're used to giving orders and taking orders within a certain structure, and my hope is that this personal testimony touches somebody that's listening right now, right? That's able to access this veteran, first responder, athlete. You got to realize that your gifts match somebody's needs outside of the ecosystem that you're used to, right? And that's the core through line that allows for opportunity. I love that word, man, opportunity. But what are you going to do with it? So for me, it was always like tunnel vision to have success, but when it became injuries, right, a prescription that first was meant for pain was easy to just cope to numb myself.
Yeah.
And that, certainly was a downward spiral, right? And pretty soon I was, not just taking the scripts that I could get from the doctor, but I was buying stuff off the street. And, NFL paychecks pretty sufficient to be able to do so. And I got sick, man. I got real sick. And, at one point I actually tried to take my own life. And, that the mental health side of that warrior mentality, right? That apex predator. And again, I'm not going to marginalize the real battlefield, Brian. What you guys and those that have served this country, y'all went to the real battleground. We just put on a helmet and got to run down the field. But that atmosphere, that tribe mentality, right, of being a part of something greater than yourself and your role mattering so much to the success of that whole collective tribe was something that I fed on. And so now in transitioning and realizing and discovering that I can still evoke that in a new paradigm, in a new way, in a new ecosystem, looking people in their eyes, treating them as whole people, and evoking and empowering them to close the gap between who they thought they were, right? Hey, I wore this cloth. This is who I am. Yes, but you're so much more. Right? And it took me falling flat on my face, going through a 7-day detox, coming off of opiates, lost 34 pounds, had 2 seizures, couldn't control either end, right? At one point, I tried to take this plate of food that I woke up kind of, out of it, not knowing whether it was day or night. And I tried to grab this plate of food, which was a crappy plate of tuna casserole.
Yeah.
Which nobody likes, much like cold hospital tuna casserole.
Yeah.
I tried to pick it up to take it to the microwave to heat it when I was in detox, and I couldn't even stand up. Bro, I fell, I hit the ground, plate shattered, tuna casserole, and I'm embarrassed. I'm on my hands and knees, could hardly open my hands, trying to scrape this up because I'm ashamed. And these nurses rushed in, and I thought, oh, they're going to help me. I feel so embarrassed. They restrained me because they thought I was going to use the broken plate to try to cut my wrists. Talk about a bottom, right? I didn't even have the strength, brother, to fight them off. Like, they tied me down easily, 2 female nurses, right? Which a couple weeks prior, running down the field for the Seattle Seahawks, that's quite the shift. So, yeah, I definitely feel like that bottom was the catapult for me to realize that my gifts match somebody's needs outside of football. A lot of what I've learned in lessons in leadership is primarily in the hard times, is what has qualified me. It's weird because in our heads, it tells us like our perceived disadvantages or limitations or inequities are the things that keep us from being that leader. When in fact, if we own them, I think that's the thing that helps us transcend and be able to truly be the leader that we were called to be.
Yeah, leadership's about action, right? So you needed to take action in your own life from that moment where you find yourself on the floor being restrained by nurses and figure out who you're going to be and what you're going to become and how you're going to have a greater impact and purpose. And those are hard things to wrestle with for sure, man. And those are things that we try to espouse all the time because we know that there are 2 things really clear when you serve in the military. You have an identity that's well defined, and you have purpose in your life. That too is well defined. You know why you're doing what you do. And the parallels to your NFL career are the same. You had a strong identity. You know, you are making a name for yourself. You're an NFL player. You know, you made the cut and you're
Yep.
doing it every Sunday out there. You're training hard, you're working hard, and you have your uniform. You put that uniform on to go into your own battle on the field. So your purpose and your identity were strong, and now they're gone.
Boom.
And now you've got to figure out how to lead yourself first, which
Yeah.
is, you know, that phrase right there comes from a book from a friend of mine, Mike Irwin, the guy that started Team RWB. And I love that. You got to learn to lead yourself first before you can then exercise leadership of others and show them the path to opportunity and empowerment. So let's get into where you went from there. How did you go about leading yourself first? And who was in your support circle? Who was in your network that helped you get there?
Wow, great questions, man. So, first it was my core, which was my wife, my family, and we were living in Orange County, and I was surfing, and it was interesting because I had rehabilitated myself to the point where the Saints called, and in that phone call, there was this moment of like my gut, like, because in my head it was like, dude, you're gonna have to literally peel me off of an NFL field, right? Like I'm gonna die out there.
Yeah.
Because that was the mindset that was necessary for this success, right? And yet it becomes this amazing mentor of mine says, the same sun that melts the ice hardens the clay. And you have to be wary of your greatest attributes becoming your greatest weakness when you use to that nth degree. So for me, it was really like, dude, how do I be accountable to David as the best, human being that's not trying to achieve his worth? I think it's often we try to say like, oh, if I can, be drafted, do this in my career, do that, that's how I achieve my worth. But that's a fallacy. That's a destination type of thinking, and it's a trap. Now, it's great to set great goals and move toward them. You're right. Action is the first step in leadership, and leading yourself is everything. So when those Saints called and I decided to listen to my gut and I said, hey, no, I'm retired, it was like, oh, crap. Like, what is actually next, And so we moved to Dallas. My wife's family's here. And I was looking for a building to buy to be able to start a gym. Like I said, the gym's always been my sanctuary where I could take sweat equity and purge, emotional distress.
Yeah.
It was always a really ripe way for me to be able to kind of holistically address a lot of the things that were spiraling in my head.
Yep.
And so I met this Navy SEAL, Clint Bruce. He's an officer at SEAL Team 5. He's a Naval Academy grad, played in the league briefly, went in the teams after 9/11, went back to football, ended up going back to the teams. And he's a prolific leader for sure. Has lost a lot of men. And, for him and I to talk, it was this intersection that was like, I remember praying and being like, hey, God, universe, if you want me to do this, let's make it laughably clear. Clint Bruce answered his phone and said, brother, I got this warehouse. We're training guys, security guys, operators. What if you started the gym here? I won't charge you a dime. Yes. The answer is yes. Yep. So with that, I got introduced to Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. So I had been doing about a year of training, the Staubach family, some elite athletes getting ready from college to go to pro, some legit people. And then Staff Sergeant Travis Mills walks into the gym. Quadruple amputee, one of 5 living that was combat injured that lost all 4 limbs. And I, as the story goes, like the hot chick in the bar, I just rolled up to him and I was like, bro, when was the last time you worked out? And he's like, man, I don't want to make you feel like an asshole, but I don't have arms and legs.
Yeah.
And I got airborne guys, right? And he's hilarious, Travis. And I was like, well, why does that matter? I understand that your physicality looks different, but that's something that is key to people like us being able to tap back into. And he took a chance on me. I had no experience, but I researched. I created all this cool kind of methodologies to make it fun, right? Not rehabilitative. And pretty soon he's doing 100-pound sled pulls on short, low prosthetics. And all my NFL guys are like, all right, maybe I'm not sore like I thought I was, this morning.
Yeah,
so
that's a real...
It's this shift happened, right? Like you've been in so many ecosystems with alphas, but sometimes the biggest kick in the balls, perspective-wise, is being in an ecosystem where you look to your right and your left, you're like, dude, these people have endured something I could hardly fathom, and yet look at them push. And that's the magic that I discovered, that realized there's this void around access and inclusion for people that, cash runs out, insurance runs out, where do they go after this trauma? And so I was like, man, I don't want to charge these people. Started offering them free training, and then we were off and running. So my internal, board or tribe war council was my wife, my father, Navy SEAL Clint Bruce, and one of my old coaches that was just like, they kept me true on, hey, David, even though going back to the NFL, the paycheck's a little better, what you're doing is a new ridgeline, and you need to stay true to it.
Yeah, I think that's a real reality check when you see these folks who, now have different things they've got to contend with in their lives. I had a team leader that worked for me in Marine Special Operations. I loved this young guy, and he was leading a team doing some incredible work. And he was all amped up and charged and doing his job the right way. And then a catastrophic event happened that just ripped both of his legs clear off his body. But the fight and drive in him, to where we talked to him from his hospital bed while we're still engaged in combat. And his promise to us was that when we returned home, he would be standing and be there to greet us outside of a wheelchair at the airport. And that he would return to the unit, and that he would return to lead men in combat again, was his promise to me from a hospital bed. And he made it all happen. So both legs clearly ripped off, double amputee, well above the knee. And within 11 months of losing both limbs, he's back in the unit, training and fit, and having to prove his worth to the Marine Corps to stay and demonstrate he's capable and fit to go back to combat and lead another unit in combat, which he did, and then conducted multiple other deployments. It's those types of people in life that punch you square in the face just by observing their grit and determination. And you see that now in the work you're doing every day in the gym with Adaptive Training Foundation. You get that reality check. You've put NFL players, prospective players in that same environment for that reality check that, man, you may be sore, you may be hurting, but not like that. And you're also mentally demonstrating to people how capable they can be again. And that's part of the recipe that I love. So let's get into your programming, the mental aspect, the mental psyche that goes along with not just the physicality, but growing their strength of mind to continue to push themselves forward. How does that process play out there in the gym?
Yeah, I think combat injured Marine Jacob Schick, great buddy of mine, the CEO of 22 Kill, partner organization of ours here in Texas. Jake, you may have seen him in American Sniper, as well as him and Bradley Cooper are boys.
Nice.
So he was in what was the Lady Gaga one too. But anyway, Jake always says this, and I love it. He says, physical pain will remind you that you're alive, but mental pain will test your will to stay that way. So here's the thing. The gym, it's a cover. Right? It's really about what's festering between the ears. The market entry may be the physical, but time and discipline changes that. What we need to change is the way they view themselves. And one of the exercises that they do when they come inbound is, and especially our Marines, God love you, salty dogs, they hate this. 5 minutes, you got to draw yourself. And they draw themselves, blah, blah, blah. They do the thing, stick figures or whatever, however they can, and they forget about it. But after our 9-week course, which involves 27 individualized, customized workouts, rock climbing, pool therapy, equine therapy, a ton of athlete lock-ins when we get behind the reason of the reason for the self principles, with our breath as an anchor, mindfulness, meditation. God forbid we call it meditation when they enter the doors. Never do. They're like, all right, hippie, get away from me. I don't need this breath work. But when we say, hey, you've been behind a rifle, right? And your breath and your heartbeat is where you're trying to time when you're pulling that trigger, that's meditation, man. All of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, maybe I am a guru, right? So what we've comprised in 9 weeks is this paradigm shift for how they see themselves. And at the end, they have to draw themselves again. And dude, if I could put side by sides, it would blow your mind, the shift. And they don't remember, they don't get to see their old picture, right? So that's a forgotten image. And really that's what it's about. It's about disassociating from the definition. When President Bush and Speaker Paul Ryan came to visit the gym, it was freaking awesome, because W looks at these guys, these men that swore in, right, under him, that said, he says, your greatest opportunity to lead is in front of you. Thank you for what you did in the uniform, but know this. And he nailed it. He's like, dude, people are going to notice. You're missing legs. You're in a wheelchair. You have this. You have that. What are you going to do with it? And they're all like, I'm like, dude, I say that every day. You guys are nodding.
Yeah, right.
When they're commanding, the guy says it, they listen. But that was such a big piece for me, where I'm like, whoa, okay. The gym is a cover for what we're really trying to do to give them a tribe and a new ridgeline. Once they realize, Starbucks, Howard Schultz, amazing supporter of ours, they did a docu-series. It was like a 6-minute called Upstanders a few years ago. That got like 50, 60, 100 million views in like a week. President Obama flew us to the White House while he was in office. We talked about kind of the vision here. And what he said was, what you're doing matters, don't stop. I said, thank you, sir. And I told him, I said, hey, I won't stop until there's an ADA certified trainer in every gym in America. Because the Americans with Disability Act requires that there's an ADA parking spot outside of corporate entities. So what type of growth is progress when you can create an ecosystem that's agnostic of race, of gender, of sexual preference, veteran, civilian, amputee, able-bodied, doesn't matter. That's the magic of what we have here. It's not just the effect of what we're pouring into these people, these adaptive athletes, but then they're a conduit to pay it forward to others like them, to have a vocational opportunity to provision for themselves and their families in a new, holistic and well lifestyle. But it also is a cool way for those people that are, like to our point earlier, the shift in perspective when you realize that, dude, maybe my problems aren't quite as big as I thought they were.
So
that's that broader message.
You're on a warpath now to changing policy. National policy.
Yep. That's exactly right. I think there's, we love to marginalize somebody, but if we think about it, what's most disruptive today? It's the differentiation, it's the uniqueness. And so like I said in the beginning of this call, it's all about playing the hand that you've dealt. It could be a drunk driver, a tree falls, it could be a combat injury, it could be a motorcycle, but life happens.
Yeah.
And I think that the point is about when adversity shows up, that's when you figure out what's indestructible in you. And through sweat equity, through that sweat psychology, when people's heart rate goes up, you start to see how they show up under stress. That's how you change people. I'm sorry, there's a lot of great organizations that give houses, they do jobs, but if it's not right up here, it's not going to be sustainable. And that's, I think, the trap is it's like, hey, we're going to give this veteran a house, it's ADA, whatever, but it's 60 miles from anybody like him.
Yeah.
Or any community to be able to dial into. That's a trap.
Okay, so you're on this path of changing policy. You've got cohorts going. You've been in existence a few years now. What changes have happened? How have you adapted your programming to meet the need and then greater need?
Yeah, so I think the fallacy early on was this 20,000 square foot location we have here in North Texas, and perhaps scaling to create 10, 20 other locations that could move the needle enough for the sake of 10 to 20 million Americans that have a physical disability. That's not true, right? I wish I was that important and that powerful, but I'm not. So really we're honing how we're using this facility as a laboratory, right, to take those concentrated solutions and then deploy them digitally to scale. So our growth model, look, the world has enough gyms, enough brick and mortars. I don't want to deal with the overhead of those. I don't want to deal with the management of those. What I want to do is create disciples and put those surrogates all across the nation and the globe to open their doors to this inclusive standard in the industry, which will shift hearts and minds. This is a soul mirror. You can't, to your point, see, the combat injured Marine that you described earlier and not be forever changed.
Yeah.
Not have that little remembrance every single time you go, man, my brain's telling me to shut it down. I should just take it easy. Now you think about that man or that woman and you're like, dude, I got more in the tank. And that I think is the benefit to all who touch that ripple effect of this narrative. And I think that the growth model, my hope is that it's not just trainers that are currently in existence, but adaptive athletes themselves, like I said, not relying on sucking the teat of the government for Social Security.
Yeah.
You know, you could be a contributor in society. In fact, I would hire you probably over and above somebody who wasn't in a wheelchair if your product is just as good. And that, I think, is the goal.
So there's potential to give them purpose in their lives beyond what you've demonstrated to them about the physicality. There's potentially purpose in spreading this and what they've learned and going out and preaching and teaching it in their own environment, becoming the trainers.
Let's relate it to right now with COVID. How many people in this world, much less the U.S., just are spiraling because they feel like this rug has been pulled out from under them? This population we serve knows that. They were diagnosed at 28 with Parkinson's. They were, on their first deployment as a 19-year-old grunt and got blown up and lost both their legs. Well, one of my guys, Kevin Trimble's a AAA amputee, literally Army cat that first deployment got blown up. Had some suicidal stuff, had to deal with some stuff, and I ran into this guy randomly in the airport. I freaking ran up to the guy, and I was like, hey, how much can you bench with that one arm? Looked him in his eyes. And he's like, just the fact I talked to him like that, he's like, the fuck are you saying? No?
Yeah.
What? And then we struck a conversation, and 6 months later he came here, and 6 months after that he moved here. So, I feel like, leadership done well should be around creating an experience that changes a belief, that changes a behavior, that shifts a result. If you think that telling somebody what to do to change their behavior, and there's so much of this in the world today, it's this self-development, self-prescriptive stuff, accountability coaches that are eating chips and drinking soda while they're telling you to go out and move. Dude, clear all that. Decide how you lead yourself, decide what you're committed to, and then, stay true to the fact that you have an opportunity to serve people to your right and left along that part of the journey. I think that is, if there's anything I've done, it's not extraordinary. It's just identify a need, decide how I do that in the most responsible way, still trying to figure that out, and do it in a way that shows people that they're real people. Don't treat them as objects. The rest takes care of itself.
All right, David. So you're really gearing up for creating programming that can be applied across the country and should be applied across the country. But how do you right now, like you've put several cohorts through your program, how do you hang on to these people? How do you not lose touch and contact? You give them 8 weeks, but then what? Like, how do you not let them fall into a state of despair again? What's your methodology there to remain in contact with them?
Yeah, early and often we remind them that we are equipping them.
Okay.
That the idea is that they could go to any fitness center, at a hotel, a gym when they're traveling, or somebody's garage, and comprise a workout based around their pathology, their uniqueness, and the tools of the methodologies that we've built. So that's step one. Now, whether they're local, national, or international, which we've had a number of athletes come through, it's about them taking these tools and investing, integrating back into their communities. So we'll incentivize with certain pieces of equipment and partners that we have that if they've gotten 3 or 5 adaptive athletes in their local community, we'll ship that out, all cost free, right? For them to have an opportunity to go through our Train the Trainer program, to get through the adaptive exercise certification, and then work with partners like the NASM, certified personal trainer, so that they have the grounds to be hired. We definitely like the idea of our alumni. We say tradition never graduates. So they have their graduation, they earn their patch, they go on their redeploy trip. Because let me make one thing clear. We train them for 9 weeks. The 10th week is about going out and kicking ass, adaptive skiing, snowboarding, mountain climbing, mountain biking, whatever that is. And that's a really cool way. Again, when they walk through our doors or crawl or crutch, whatever it is, it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
At some level, it becomes comfortable, it becomes the norm. Now is our time to push them back outside the walls, go test themselves in a venue or a public setting or a seemingly insurmountable task. And then they get to come back and say, hey, here's how I did. And we celebrate that, and yet we hold them accountable to what they're saying they want to continue to grow and go through. So boiling it down, there's a simple way for them as alumni, if they're local, to continue to be in the fold and pay it forward, helping our new athletes. There's a vocational pipeline for them, local or remote, to be able to go and have a hireability in this type of pipeline in training adaptives as well as other able-bodied people.
Okay.
But this COVID has proposed an amazing opportunity for us to see like how well do we connect virtually. And so I'd say over the last 3 months, our 200 plus athletes that have gone through this program are closer than ever as a result of, right? Not in spite of, but because of this opportunity. And so, call yourselves the Adaptive Training Foundation. You better freaking adapt, right? You better be behaviorally flexible. You better be emotionally flexible. You better be willing to have the hard conversation and grow. I don't care if it's Black Lives Matter, if it's around wearing gloves and a mask. We need to be able to lean in together, see people as people. Look, you don't build a bridge to meet in the middle. That's a trap. You build a bridge to walk around the other person's side. You may not like it. You probably won't understand it. But as you get back to your side, there's space around your understanding of their perspective and yours. That is hopefully the grounds for at least respect, if not an open conversation.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's what we're lacking today. You have to be this or you have to be that. You can't be and it's just not black and white. So what we want to do is equip, then it's for them. And you know what? Here's the cool part. Somebody the other day said, well, one of our Marines that lives 40 minutes from here hasn't been in 3 months, and they're portraying that as bad to me. And I said, you know what? I've talked to that Marine 4 different times in the last month. He's doing his workouts. He's gotten certified in dog training. That's what he's doing for himself right now and helping others. And he's good. So I don't get overly reactive to we only have 50 of the 200. Where are the other people? Because if they don't need us, they don't need us.
Right.
But they know that they can always reach out and we can help and be a conduit of outsourcing support.
Yeah, we feel that sentiment too sometimes in the work we do at Mission 43. It's like you have that need to be needed because you found a population that at some point in time, they need your help. They need your support. They need to be empowered. And then when you get them there, sometimes they don't need it. And it's okay.
Yeah.
And let them run their course, man. You have set them up, given them the trajectory, let them go. And when they need it again, because of what you provided them and that safe place and space and the support, they'll come back. They'll realize they need it again. And
so check this.
It's okay.
So that same Marine, before I even formalized the organization, this is probably 2013, 2014, I was training this guy. And at that time, he had 2 legs. Now they've chopped one off. They were doing limb salvage. This dude was actually on deployment, but fell about 55 feet on a fast rope exercise and landed on the carrier. Bad deal. Shattered both heels, broke his back, all this stuff. Well, I was in a meeting, and at the time, I had a little 8-foot office, and I'm with 3 people, and the door goes flying open, and this dude walks in, doesn't look at anybody else. He looks at me and said, "There's only 2 reasons I haven't killed myself." Okay.
Boom.
He said, 1, I wear this ring that signifies the 20 a day as a reminder. And 2, I knew that your gym was here, that when I got out of San Antonio, I could come here. Now, you know what? Fast forward, he goes through multiple classes, whatever. Now, all of a sudden, I haven't heard from him in a bit. I know, and he knows, he can reach out at any moment. So to your point, it's seasons and cycles, and we want them to know that we're always there to be able to have their backs.
So what do you fear about this arena you've stepped into? What are you afraid of with this? I mean, this is a bold move for you professionally, personally. What do you fear?
I think the fear of missed opportunity as a container is something that I would cite as a constant whisper in my mind. If I don't do, if I'm not active in, if I'm not pushing toward, guys like you and me, if it's not hard, is it worth it? We don't trust, we distrust ease. And not to say that when you find your why and your passion, it should be easy. No, it's not going to be.
Yeah, it's never easy.
Never. But the intensity doesn't mean that in fact, the intensity should be the confirmation that you're on the right course. So for me, it's really just being when I started this thing, bro, and this is my wife hates when I share this story, but it's so real, and I think people will enjoy it. I was trying to keep my for-profit and my nonprofit, and I was doing 30 or 40 adaptive athletes a week and not charging them because I felt like they deserved it. And one night I came home, and it's probably 2 a.m., and at the time I had like an hour commute and all this stuff, and I came home, there was one light over the kitchen table. It was like interrogation room, you know. I like cracked the door, I see my wife sitting there, and I'm like, all right. And I sat down, and she looks at me cold right in my eyes and says, do I have to be missing an arm or a leg for you to put the same type of focus and attention on me and your family?
Boom, yeah.
Oh, but you know what? She wasn't throwing a freaking dig. She was just stating what I needed to hear.
Yep.
Because I get blinded. I get into that tunnel vision for success and these people, what I care about, and what I was doing was I just wasn't broadening my vision to take in the whole picture. So I think, what am I scared of? Well, I would say the idea that that I am responsible for somebody else. You know, I had one of my best friends, veteran in our program, commit suicide January 3rd, 2018. And Sergeant Stephen Jackal, to me, in the definition of a true warrior and somebody who I saw serve people in his lowest of points, I felt responsible. And that same Navy SEAL, Clint Bruce, and I got on the phone, and he said, DV, Clint was a linebacker at Naval Academy. He said, you know when you played football, did you care about how many tackles you made? I said, no, sir, I just cared whether we won. He said, yeah. He goes, this is the opposite. Winning and losing in this case isn't up to you. But the days that you had with Stephen and the days that you gave him as a result of this mission and looking him in the eyes and loving him, that's everything. And he goes, so don't measure it based around why or where or how you could have saved him. Saving isn't up to us. You don't stop somebody from committing suicide. You can empower them to see that their life is worth it and that they have different tools to apply to people. But, you know, in the case of Stephen, he'd been doing work like that for a couple of years. There's never going to be a clear, easy explanation. But for me, it took a couple of years of healing now to say, damn, I thought I could be that powerful, and yet I realized that I'm not, and I can't burn myself out at the expense to try to save anybody. And that's been a really hard lesson. So I think my probably deep-seated fear is a fear of inadequacy, a fear of not being able to deliver, a fear of not being able to protect. As a man, as a father, as a husband, as a whatever, you know, those are the things that I take a hard look at myself in the mirror. But I need to realize, too, that just doing my best, suiting up every day, leading myself well, is going to put me in a position more often than not to be successful in that.
Yeah, I mean, you're making personal relationships with the people that come through your doors, and to not feel that sense of responsibility for how and what the outcomes are for them, I can totally understand being, to some degree, a bit overwhelming. And it should feel that way. As a leader, you know, you're exercising leadership, and I love this, that it's about relationships. It's the only way to truly connect and drive people towards whatever that goal, that outcome that you're striving towards is. You've got to do it on a relational basis. And to me, that's always the hard part. When I feel the fissures happening in those relationships, when I'm trying to exercise leadership with people, that's what I fear, like failing them in moments of leadership, or the chance to exercise it and not doing it well, to where it collapses, the relationship collapse, and then reflecting on where I potentially went wrong in that, that's what I fear, like not bringing my best self to the game when it's an opportunity to step up. Yeah. So I know that your program is on the verge of scalability, right? But who are you partnered with? You mentioned the Starbucks Foundation. Who else has brought time, effort, energy, money to this really inspiring movement and foundation that you've started?
Yeah, so Anheuser-Busch has been a great conduit of support, both in cash capital and in sponsorship, as well as product. One of the things we do is really fun. Once a month, we call it the Sweatiest Hour, but it's a free community boot camp. We put on 2 different sessions. 200 or 300 people participate. We integrate adaptive athletes on every team. Have a big 25-foot inflatable hill. 6-foot wall you got to go under. So you may have a triple amputee that you're like, dude, collectively as a team of 6, we got to get this guy up over this wall as many times as possible. And that just shifts hearts and minds. Like, I love that. As a father, I would say this, I feel so proud of the fact that my girls do not see disability. They don't. They've grown up around it. This is normal for them. And that's a powerful thing, right? They're never looking away from someone in pain, right? That's such a cool way to live when you then see how you can defend the weak. And so for our program, having that opportunity for people to experience what it is to integrate with adaptive athletes, that's a super powerful thing. I always feel like you just nailed it with the relationship side. The smell test matters. you know when somebody genuinely sees you as a person or an object. And with us, the storytelling side of these people's narrative is the most powerful part.
Sure. But
it's not the old, WWP sympathy box, freaking Sarah McLachlan dog commercial, right? It's always about, yes, inspiration, but inspiration washes off, but aspiration for you, because this person says, hey, I came as I was, but I wasn't expected to stay that way. And so we try to enact as many growth-producing fear encounters, integrative-based training that is inclusive, so that people can broaden their perspectives and totally eclipse what they thought was possible. That is, that for me is what, if tomorrow David Vobora's life ends, I know that what I've instilled in the people on my team and what these athletes stand for can live on. And it's never been about David, man. I think the greatest leaders are those that have led in a way that they intend to be quickly forgotten. And typically those are the leaders that usually aren't.
Yep.
That right there for me is awesome. So Anheuser-Busch, Starbucks, Howard Schultz, the Schultz Family Foundation, JP Morgan, and this is where I go back to the football platform. Being Mr. Irrelevant, having these opportunities, going around and speaking corporately and talking about this concept of disruptive leadership is where we've woven that into corporate sponsorship. So individual giving, awesome. My grandma, my mom, the people that are proud of me early on, that's great. That leads into, corporate ROI. I knew that people's philanthropy budgets were like this, and their marketing budgets were like this. So early on, it was, I think, 2015 or 2016, we did this Doritos competition for the Super Bowl commercial. And we didn't win to get the place in the Super Bowl ad, but we released it the following Monday, and we just encouraged Americans to help us share it to get 22 million views to point to the veteran suicide. And it had like 100 million views in a week.
Wow.
Right, crazy. Frito-Lay, 2 months later, right before Memorial Day, calls me and says, hey, we want to show your video for awareness. I was like, oh, great. And I literally hung up the phone. Kid you not. I had one employee at the time, Maddie. She looked at me and was like, what are you doing? And I said, don't worry, they'll call back. And then there's this like moment of Jerry Maguire where I'm like, shit, I hope they call back. I hope they call back. They called and the woman says, oh, I lost you. I said, no, I hung up. She says, well, I'm sorry, did I offend you? I said, well, you didn't offend me, but you're exploiting my guys because it's convenient now to tell this story.
Yeah.
I said, so here's what I'm asking. I'm asking you to put some money behind this, right? What's it going to be? She said, look, $1 per share on Facebook, capped at 10,000. You have a week. I said, we'll have it by midnight. We had it by midnight because the law of 1,000 true fans, those that are truly invested. But what that did for us was not only $10,000 in the pocket, but it proved a marketing return on investment. So now I went to these and I targeted these corporations. And when I'd be doing these big speaking gigs on Park Avenue for Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, I'm like, hey, Jamie, by the way, this is what I need. And that all wove back into multi-year sponsorship. So individuals, corporate, certainly grant-based stuff and research to better policy and push things forward. But for me, this train the trainer model is a revenue stream, which means we don't have to knock on as many doors to fundraise, which means we're much more sustainable, again, more deployable in, there's a guy in Iowa right now that's in a wheelchair that we can't serve here. But
Yeah.
if I can send him a 9, 10, 12, 15-week training program digitally, he's going to progress and better his life. Then he's going to find somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And that's what really, gets my piss hot in the morning.
Okay, so there's a big demographic of people out there, right? You mentioned 10 million people that have some sort of physical disability in this country, but your program probably isn't for everyone. So what's the mindset? What are the people that participate? What do they come with? What do they have to have?
An open mind. The only disability is a closed mind, right? Is a non-growth mindset. If I had this coach that I worked with for a couple of years. I was, this is part of my story, and I share it with pride, not in the sense of, oh, look at me, this happened to me, but in the sense of where it's given me an opportunity to serve others who've endured a similar thing, and that is around being sexually abused as a kid. I don't think I would have made it in the NFL had that not occurred, because for me, it was about, achieving so nobody asked me what happened. And so for me, that is a consistent piece where I'm trying to make sure that nobody puts me on a pedestal, that they realize that like my own scars are the factors that have evoked this type of mindset in me. And if that can be the consistent thing that we find, because there's a lot of people that have given, man. And not just the, ultra affluent and wealthy people that are stroking checks, but that this is really freaking cool, man. The Marine that's a Jewish dude who was in the Upstanders documentary that Starbucks did, Brian Aft, his mother, who works at the Jewish synagogue, I had no idea about this, but we started getting these checks, and everything was divisible by 18, 36, 180, all this stuff. And it was just odd. And I'm like, what? Anyway, through this, I discovered, and she calls me and she says, because anything divisible by 18 in the Jewish religion is called the gift of life. Dude, I wish I'd kept all those $18 checks and posted them on the wall, because it's never about equal contribution, but it's always about equal sacrifice. That was so meaningful for those people that, to me, that's everything. So, that's where I want to shine light on. It's not always the big corporate sponsors or the big this. The quadruple amputee or the quadriplegic that barely has the dexterity to feed himself that suddenly can is just as celebrated as the Paralympian that stands on the podium. And I think that's something that makes ATF really special.
So your program really could be for everyone, as long as they come with an open mind and they're willing to put in the effort to make positive change in their own lives.
Yeah, you got to disassociate with the identity that says you've somehow arrived or that somehow you should play it safe. If you can do that, man, watch out. Your greatest potential, you're going to tap into it, and it'll be a force multiplier for everybody in your life. I think those that are often closest to us, when we have an athlete come from Florida and wife's back home or whatever, we know that's difficult. And so we do a ton of kind of in-house counseling to make sure that they realize that there's a level of healthy selfish. That if they can pour into themselves, then they're a better benefit to those that they love and those around them. If they're kind of caught between, they're never going to be able to really tap in to the greatest opportunity there.
Yeah, nobody owes you anything in this life. You got to earn it. So I love that you're empowering people to recognize that they're not owed. They got to put in the sweat equity. They've got to come with an open mind, and they've got to work hard to achieve those goals, those things that may have been perceived beyond their capabilities. So you're bringing them hope and you're bringing them results, which I love. So we're going to see you in Idaho in October, right? You're bringing folks to work with just a great organization that we're friends with, Higher Ground up in Sun Valley. So what's going to happen? What's going to take place, or what are you designing with Higher Ground right now?
Yeah, it'll be a great week of exposure to adaptive sports, from mountain biking and fly fishing and rock climbing and just here's the thing. All of these, we call them adaptive athletes for a reason. That word athlete. So Bill Bowerman, Nike, used to say, if you have a human body, you're an athlete, whether you compete at sport or not. And I love that. And we've been very intentional about so many things here at the gym, and that's one of them. So we want to expose them to things that can create a lifestyle to which they can compete and they can pay it forward. So, somebody else that's just gotten out of the hospital after an amputation and whatnot, they can talk about that experience, get them dialed in, get opportunities and grants and supports through people like us, through people like Higher Ground, Challenge Athletes Foundation, Mission 43. It's just about bringing people together, man, to move the needle. I think people sometimes in not-for-profit, they say, we're all vying for the same dollar. Like, no, there's plenty of money in this world. It's not about that. It's about how we can come together and collaborate so that rising tides raise all boats. If we can do that consistently, it may be seasonal. You may be with a partner for a little bit and then shift to somebody else. But Higher Ground is certainly somebody who's been doing it for a long time and doing it in a really powerful way. That's never about participation trophies, right? Like, hey, we're going to get out here and really push it and really go for it. And you're going to be expected to go above and beyond. Those are the type of people that we want to do life with.
Yeah, pushing people beyond their limits, man. Higher Ground does that so well. And I love the work they do. And I look forward to coming and checking that out and spending some time with you when you're here in Idaho. So let's make that a point to get together and talk more about how our organizations may be able to work together. Because I love your messaging. I love the work you're doing. I love your new sense of identity and purpose that you have found through hard work and determination and surrounding yourself with great people to help you get there, because you didn't do it alone. These are all really powerful messages in life, man, that so many people need to listen to and grab a hold of and harness for themselves and apply. So I commend you for what you're doing. I love this energy and the amount of effort you're putting into people. And you live and embody, our mantra of lead, learn, and inspire. So keep it up, man. It does matter. So,
brother, appreciate you, man. Truly, I take lead from people like you, and honored to be on the conversation. And thank you to all those that have listened. I say this a lot. People say, "How do we get involved? How this?" Dude, if you follow ATF, cool. Share the messages, the stories, post them. Somebody in your life's been hit by some type of physical disability or trauma, and it'll touch them. If you want to step up and buy a T-shirt that supports our athletes and funding their sponsorship, that's great too. Know that it's never about equal contribution, but about equal sacrifice. Whatever's meaningful to you, we just appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man, and I truly look forward to seeing you here in Idaho in October.
Yeah, man. Can't wait.
All right.
Thanks,
take care. Yep.
Better, brother.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of the Mission 43 Lead, Learn, Inspire podcast. I encourage you to take a look at David Vobora's organization, the Adaptive Training Foundation, and find the inspiration perhaps that you may need in your own life. I also want to say that we do this to empower people. We give them the opportunity to listen to people making a difference around the country in their own special ways. So we ask you, if you like this message, to subscribe to this podcast, to continue to follow us and to engage with us. So we're going to give away from our sponsor, Spy Optics standard issue sunglasses, through a random drawing each month to somebody that subscribes to this podcast. So pay attention to what we're putting out. Subscribe to Mission 43 Lead, Learn, Inspire podcast. And again, thanks to our sponsor for supporting this effort of putting this positive messaging out there. And we will give away a pair of these incredible glasses. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.